a game that took 58 minutes for us to get a touchdown, but that's all that you needed was one of them for Miami to find a way to win. The wind was a huge factor here, and I don't want to take away from that, but it really just felt like neither of these teams wanted to win. I thought the Tony fumble and the touchdown he ended up scoring later, great redemption kind of story. But man, when he fumbled that, I thought, all right, there you go, A&M. That was the break you needed. Your offense can't do anything, but here you go. They're giving you the game. And A&M was like, nah, dog, we're good. Like, we don't need it. It's fine. Huge credit to Miami's defense in rewatching it since last night. I did kind of an instant reaction to it. In rewatching it, their defense, I mean, Reed wasn't great. And that last interception, horribly thrown ball. The first interception was bad too. But Miami was there and made plays. They did a good job against that rushing attack. I know that A&M's got guys banged up, but I thought Miami's defense really, really impressive. Carson Beck, I mean, you're going to have to figure some stuff out if you want to beat Ohio State. There's no doubt about that. But their trenches showed up, I thought, pretty well. But man, it was ugly. Tom, you can start here since Cole did the last one.
Yeah, it was interesting because Marcel Reed, I hate seeing his attempt number approach 40. Like, that's not the best football for Texas A&M or Marcel Reed. It reminded me a little bit of the Marcel Reed performance we saw against Texas last year to wind down the season. He just seemed skittish and unsettled, and I appreciated him wanting to hang in the pocket and trying to make a throw. But we talked about it coming into this game, is that this guy could really have affected this game with his legs and made something of the ground game, which was virtually non-existent against Miami. Credit to the Hurricanes. That defense, that defensive line especially, is outstanding. They made life very difficult for Texas A&M. Couldn't run the ball, and Marcel Reed was constantly bouncing around the pocket. They hemmed him in. They forced him to make throws that he didn't want to make into the wind that you talked about. And then for Miami, Mark Fletcher and that offensive line just had an outstanding game. So that's something you can always hang your hat on in this era of college football. Not even this era, just the history of college football. If you can play great defense and run the football, you're probably going to be okay. And that erased a lot of the issues for Carson Beck. Again, the elements being a factor, but Carson Beck just did not have his accuracy, his zip on the ball. He wasn't reading the defense all that well. Credit to Texas A&M and company like Christian York made a hell of a play at one point to take away what could have been a touchdown pass for Miami there earlier on in the game. So something's up with Carson Beck, and it's been that way for much of this season. And I don't know if that surgery he had on his throwing arm, that Tommy John surgery, I don't think he's the same guy that we saw a couple years ago at Georgia have prolific numbers. Now, again, I wouldn't even begin to compare the weapons and resources he had at that point in time to what he has here at Miami. It's night and day. But Carson Beck just is not the same athlete. He doesn't have the same ability that he's had in the past. So I worry for what he's going to have to deal with against Ohio State, and having some time to collect themselves. Like, the running game is going to be important for them against Ohio State, and you can have a little bit of success, but like, the road doesn't get easier here for Miami. This was just this was not an inspiring effort for either side, and especially if you're looking at Miami trying to advance into the next round. Well, everybody and their brother knows that it's going to be Mark Fletcher Jr. running the ball 20-something times. Okay, what if Ohio State sells out to beat that and dares Carson Beck to go to the air and go over the top? I don't think Miami has answers for that.
Cole, I want to get your thoughts on Miami, but I will stop here and ask. I saw Chris tweeted that A&M was frauds. Do you agree with that? SEC Unfiltered plug here for just a minute.
Oh, man. By the way, watch every single week. We do 3 live streams a week. Anyways, it's really challenging to go down that pathway. I think frauds is not the right word, but I think that it became very well known. They were not the 3rd best team in the country at any point this year. They were not a top 5 team in college football this year. And in critical moments, they crapped the bed. I think that's more so what I would say. You're given the schedule that is allotted to you at the start of the season, and you're told, hey, you win out and you do X, Y, and Z things. You'll put yourself in a position to where you guarantee your spot in the college football playoff. Texas last season went 11-1. They played 2 ranked teams all year outside of the Michigan game that ended up being a very underwhelming Michigan team, and they went 1-1 in those matchups. They lost to Georgia. They beat Texas A&M. But they went 11-1. We weren't keeping them out of the college football playoff. I don't think for 1 second Texas A&M should have ever been left out of the college football playoff. They should have ever been considered a team that was not guaranteed and put themselves in a position to where with their schedule, how they were able to accomplish the factors and put themselves into the next conversation, and they were 11-0 going into the last game of the regular season, you were going to leave them out. Like, I don't think that's the case. But slowly but and surely, much like last season when they were sitting at 7-1 and they found a way to go 8-4, you started to see the floodgates open on up. And there was a little crack in the dam, and it's like, we can just patch that up, no problem solved. Okay, well, now we're getting a little bit bigger. We got to go out and we got to go be able to put in somebody who can probably actually really fix this wall. And then the floods were coming on in, and you're telling the village, hey, guys, you have to evacuate for your own safety because of it's not going to end well. And eventually the dam broke, and it just destroyed everything that was in sight. That was A&M's playoff national championship chances. They did not look great in the first half against South Carolina. Marcel Reed had multiple interception games in 4 of his last 6 outings to close out the year. There were a lot of things that you were looking at A&M and saying they were just getting by. They were winning in 1-score possessions. Eventually, something's got to give. And it started to 3 weeks ago when they took on Texas, and it continued down that pathway into this matchup against Miami. Now, I will say, I got to give Miami a lot of credit, and I got to give their defense a lot of credit. Like, the thing that we have to remind ourselves of is last season, Miami was good enough offensively to win a national title. I will die on that take. They were phenomenal when it came to running the football. They were exceptional when it came to passes downfield. Cam Ward was elite when it came to some of his decision makings, but you relied so heavily on Cam Ward playing hero ball to guarantee if you were going to get a win. So what did we see this past offseason? Mario Cristobal went out and he said, I'm going to fix this defense. I'm going to go out. I'm going to bring in a better coordinator. I'm going to go get Corey Heatherman, and I'm going to let him run the show, and I'm going to not have any say on what goes on. Guess what? This defensive backfield stepped on up in such critical moments, especially in the second half. Bryce Fitzgerald, the safety, freshman, he is going to be a foundational piece long term. Ruben Bain is a psychopath. The man does not need to be considered for 1 second a normal human being. And to give, I kid you not, to give that much free ammunition if you were Trey Zune in that offensive line, all of the bulletin board material, for him to fester on over for 6 straight days was probably the worst game plan that you had out there. They made A&M one-dimensional. They took away the rushing attack. Marcel Reed, who has been known for being a dual-threat machine, was basically obsolete most of the afternoon. They said, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us through the air. And ultimately, this came down to a couple of major explosive plays. One team capitalized, one team didn't. Like, that's just kind of it. Like, if we're really breaking this game down, Mark Fletcher being able to run the football efficiently on that last drive and getting the ball into Malachi Toney's hands after he fumbled earlier in the game really was the deciding factor between those two on why a team was able to win and why a team wasn't. Reed constantly showed you throughout the season who he was as a quarterback. And you were able to live with it for the most part because of, hell, you had 2 great wide receivers that bailed you out of trouble in Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. Craver came up with probably the best catch of the day. He also probably came up with the biggest catch of the day. But at the same time, one team got points off of it, one team didn't. Texas A&M got into Miami's 30 on 4 different occasions. They had 3 points to show off of it. As much as you want to blame Texas A&M for having an underwhelming offensive personnel and a bad day at the office, you also got to give credit, I think, to Miami. Miami showed on up defensively. Miami was able to have more consistency when it came to running the football. Miami was able to be better when it came to winning the turnover battle. Miami did a lot of things that were just the non-negotiables in a game like this. And I came away feeling more impressed with Miami as a team, realizing, much like Alabama, the committee got it right by putting them in the playoff. Because at least they can say, we went on the road, we went in a hostile environment, we went up against a team that was for most of the season ranked at the top 5, we handle business, we're moving on to Arlington.
I'll get right back to the video, but first I do want to give Sleeper some love. Make sure you're using the Sleeper app through the rest of the college football playoff, through bowl season, through the NBA on Christmas Day, through the NHL season in full swing, the end of the NFL season. Even if you're not using the more or less feature to make some money with us, make sure you're using the Sleeper app to check scores, to see other fans crashing out in the comments as big plays are happening. It's a great experience. You can use our code right now if you are going to deposit. CFA gets you a 100% match up to $100. We appreciate Sleeper for their support. Check their terms and conditions because terms of use to apply. They've been a great partner this year, and you should be checking them out if you haven't already. I thought that both teams squandered great opportunities. You mentioned Texas A&M, having the one explosive play to Craver, not being able to do anything with it. Obviously had the field goal blocked. I mean, Miami had, they kind of made more of an opportunity with the big time punt return by Tony, who obviously got the game winner. And then they got inside, whatever, and couldn't end up scoring. They didn't score off did they score or did they only get no, they didn't, because it went to halftime. They didn't score off the Marcel Reed, the first turnover either. And so both these teams got opportunities and then just squandered them over and over and over again. We talk about A&M at the end of the game squandering opportunity, but Miami made their own opportunity at the end of the game and largely due to Mark Fletcher, right? That's what that last drive was until they got down close and then Tony took it in. That didn't come off of an A&M turnover. That was a long drive where they had to go make something happen. And so neither one of these teams capitalized very well off of opportunities. Miami just kind of made their own at the end, and they were, I thought, did it feel like to you guys, just quickly, it felt like to me, Miami was in control this whole game. Like there was never not that it was a guaranteed win or anything, but it felt like Miami was more in control of it than A&M was. Now they weren't finishing, but shoot, Miami could have had 3 more field goals. Yeah. They missed 3 field goals and the wind was a factor, and they doinked one of them. But I thought Miami was more in control for large portions of this game. And I thought the better team won. The team that played better yesterday.
The consistent ability to run the football made it easier for Miami in that respect. And I would agree that they did control the game for the most part, but there were more opportunities for Texas A&M to threaten, to Cole's point.
Yeah. So
I think when you look at it from the standpoint of Miami made the most of when their opportunities came because they found their way into the end zone. That really was it. Where A&M, they only had a few big explosive plays. They squandered the opportunities to be able to at least build a rapport. But the one thing I also will say, and it drives me crazy because there's so many people who want to go ahead and talk bad shit about this game and say SEC is overrated or that Miami doesn't belong in the college football playoff because of look how these two teams combined for 13 total points. Have we gotten so problematic as a society to not respect great defensive football games? Like, have we gotten to a point
people
where
want points, Cole? People want
why
points.
are we not allowed to say that a team that had been known all season as a sleeping giant in the trenches finally showed on up and beat up on an offensive line that was great all year in pass protection and got 7 sacks on Marcel Reed? Why are we not allowed to celebrate that? Why are we not allowed to celebrate the defensive line of Texas A&M being able to make Carson Beck very one-dimensional? And the best player that you had to look at was quite literally Malachi Toney, who had to play quarterback because guess what? That was the only way that you could even see a little bit of traction, and you had to run a jet sweep to get him on into the end zone. I'm sorry. That's just it. And I see this comment right here from Morris, so I want to throw this out here real fast. Miami was third in the ACC. Miami was third in the ACC because the ACC's dumb, stupid, moronic rules on how they go about conference champions was the reason they didn't play in Charlotte. They were not the third best team in the ACC. They were the best team in the ACC. They were the only team in the ACC that was going to be able to make some noise in the college football playoff. So Jim Phillips and everybody else better find a way to change the freaking rules moving forward. So when your best team is not having an opportunity to play in Charlotte, you make sure that they end up playing in Charlotte. Because my God, Miami this entire season, even in bad losses, still was the more complete team, in my opinion, in the conference.
Yeah. And there's a big issue. Tom and I were talking about this before we started. There's a big issue when a team as bad as Duke, which they were not a good team this year. I'm just going to say that.
Not even a little bit.
Lost 5 games.
They were not a good team. There's a problem when a team like Duke doesn't play the second best, the third best, the fourth best, the fifth best, the sixth best, or the seventh best team in the conference. The conferences are too big. That's not Duke's fault. It is the ACC's fault for having a 19-team conference at this point. And, obviously maybe some of those ads thinking that other teams would bolt or just trying to protect themselves. Yeah, it's a problem when you can't determine. And similarly for A&M played one good team in the conference too. But had a good out of conference win. And so you kind of overlook that a bit for them. But yeah, it's a bit of an issue that a team like Duke can make a conference championship because of conferences are just too big and you're not able to schedule and you're not able to have balanced schedules at all. There's always going to be tougher or easier schedules within a conference. That's fine. But part of the problem, most of the problem lies with the ACC. Beck wasn't, I saw some comments on Beck. I am not a Beck hater. I kind of believed that he could be really good at Miami because of the offense they were going to and the weapons and the offensive line and all that. But he took care of the ball. That's all that was to me. That we talked about this. We talked about this in the Oklahoma-Alabama game. We talked about it in this game. Whichever team can take, this is why I kind of thought Miami had a better path to victory and why I ended up taking them. I thought that Marcel Reed was more likely to be an issue for his team than Beck was for his. And that's the way it turned out. Reed was an issue for A&M. Beck didn't light the world on fire by any means, but I think he was like 14 of 20 or 16 of 20. Like he was fine. A lot of that was pretty short yardage. Dink and dunk.
20, 103 yards.
Yeah. And 11 of those yards came on.
Downfield was a 20-yard play to Keelan Marion. That was his longest pass.
And 11 of those yards came on a pop pass for the touchdown, on essentially handoff, right? So he finished under 100 yards of like downfield passing, but he wasn't a problem. And that's all you needed to do in that game, So anyway, we will preview it obviously later next Sunday or Monday at this time, but the Miami Ohio State storylines will be a lot of fun. And hopefully the game's good too. Like certainly I'm not going to sit here and cheer for Miami while I wear this FSU hoodie or whatever. But I do think the storylines in that one will be a ton of fun.
Before we move on, just before we go ahead and close the chapter, congratulations to Miami on beating up on the SEC. I give you credit. I thought Miami was always deserving to be in the college football playoff. It's very sad that they got snubbed and that the committee slapped them in the face and put them at 18 initially. But can we all agree after the bombardment of bullshit that we heard from Notre Dame fans and people over the last 2 weeks as they were hyping and hollering and complaining about life not being fair to them because of they were lied to, which they were, that there are two arguments that still stood tall about we're better than Miami and we should be in because we were ranked ahead of them, and Alabama is terrible because they lost to Georgia. Now have to really shut the hell up because of both those teams won. Mm-hmm. Like, can we all disagree? Like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have been talking shit. Like, maybe you should have opted out of your bowl game and instead of, maybe played against BYU to prove, kind of like Miami and Alabama just proved, they did belong in the playoff. I mean, we won't know if you actually belong as an 11-2 team. But you know what? As an SEC homer, as a shill for the conference that just means more, it's very funny to hear about all these hypothetical wins that the SEC claims every single year. Meanwhile, if we can't say this out loud, so far, if you didn't know, ladies and gentlemen, Notre Dame is 12-2 this season because they have hypothetical wins over both Miami and Alabama. Oh, and if you didn't know even further, oh, man, if only there was like a data point that said, hey, those two teams that faced off in Kyle Field yesterday, if only Notre Dame could play against them during the regular season, then maybe they actually could have won that game.
We'd have learned so much.
Maybe we would have learned something about it. Oh, wait a minute. You were the one to give up 41 points to that team that scored 3. You gave up 27 points to the team that scored 10?
Right, yeah.
Where is the argument to keep you out of the playoff, ladies and gentlemen? How dare we?
41 at home, especially to the one team. That's interesting. If Notre Dame fans are angry at anybody, be angry with Tulane. Be angry with JMU. Be angry with the committee on that respect and the G5 stuff, which we'll never hear the end of.
But, by the way, if you really want to be angry at Jim Phillips for something, be angry at him for having bullshit rules about how to play a conference championship. Because Miami was the only team that could have won the conference and actually made noise in the college football playoff. And if they did do that, then Notre Dame would have been in, JMU would not have been in, and this whole would have been a whole different argument. But no, you want to complain that Jim Phillips didn't defend you because of you claim to be an ACC team in every other sport besides football, and then when the ACC needs representation, hey guys, we take your really shitty teams at the bottom of the pecking order and then just say, yeah, you know what, screw it. You can go ahead and have them be just tune-up games for us. Yeah, we're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt in that standpoint. Sit down, shut up. You have no argument anymore to be in the playoff. Oh, by the way, that Alabama team that you were complaining about nonstop, I retweeted all of your dumbasses who said it was 17. And I would have done the same thing if it was Oklahoma too. Because let me make something abundantly clear. It's college football. Shit can change in a span of 5 minutes. Don't tweet before the ending. My God.
Did you see that Notre Dame, not to pile on, did you see Notre Dame lost to Purdue Fort Wayne, the Mastodons, today in basketball? It didn't.
The Mastodons are an impressive basketball team.
So
it's almost like it couldn't happen to a better look.
How
is the ACC going to survive in basketball this year, guys?
I thought this was a better tweet than it got action on, but I quote tweeted and said, "How could Jim Phillips let this happen?" And so listen, don't tweet till it's. I intentionally tweeted that the SEC was 0-2 in home games after they lost. A&M lost. Now one of those was against an SEC team.
Right. Undefeated on the road, but undefeated on the road.
And man, the generational crash out from people not understanding that that's exactly what I wanted was pretty fantastic.